An unsolvable problem in mathematics, written about in books such as Higher Order Differential Equations, Chapter 4, Differential Equations and Boundary Problems, and etc. Now, causes distress. And normally distress requires what's called in psychology as self-care. In other words, a spa therapy visit. And aside from being required to live this life I talk about now, with no freedom as a man anymore, unless I'm gender neutral, then a problem solved with decision making from a brain and neurons and synapses connecting to other neurons hinders those processes in a system called psychiatry and psychology. They argue with their theoretical and philosophical and information and experiments conducted in labs at locations similar to the University of Washington, doesn't accomplish what they get paid and funded and granted to do now. Worst of all, unfortunately. And although their housing has good apartments and studios occasionally, the few that are available are so similar to hallucination, I can barely count the minutes and seconds and hours and time until I don't have to have this body and be human anymore in this decided duality on a planet Earth. Greta Thunberg, a Nobel laureate with power, says, has a fire from climate change now. Most difficult to say in words and language and sentences and sounds has to do with the amount of mathematics I could possibly read along with neurology textbooks on Amazon and still have a human stare at my face and observe the twitches of my eyes and the duration of my pupils not dilating, while my hands stay on my feet, bending over to not cause them an emotion and unexpected color for their mood, who are treating my symptoms. They declare mental health needed now to not be poor and suffer, growing weak and frail. Within the procedures, those professionals, those doctors, those psychiatrists, don't bother to follow, but so willingly follow their patients and their clients all the way until they get to a door of a room in a house in a hotel where they rent them a place to sleep on a bed they provide, to not have a tent in their park, to not cause more coronavirus pandemic sickness in a shelter they operate now. And when they get to the door of the room in the house, they need to inspect to make sure a hotel residence doesn't need a do not disturb sign. They lock the door behind them and their self and ego for their mind to have energy to treat more of their subjects, more of their experiments for climate change and green housing with energy and electricity monitored, undoubtedly, for irregularities not covered by a subsidy, a grant, and some free money from a donor who wants to know what's the smallest amount of power you can give a human and the least amount of meat and the smallest food and calories provided for them and their behavior to not bother a software engineer at Microsoft and cause a disruption, confusion, misdirection for a Google, Facebook, artificial intelligence, algorithm, coding, self-driving car, inventing genius, who are needed with their intelligence and brilliance to make up for humans such as I who are worthless bitches and a waste of an object they could use to power their spaceships and cars for their children, their babies, their mothers and their fathers and their families, who continue a human race called mankind. For only those who are selected, allowed, graduates of their universities and colleges called Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Brown, Arizona State, Caltech, MIT, Virginia Tech, University of California, Berkeley, University of Washington, Washington State University, University of Arizona, University of Chicago, Ohio State University, and most prestigious for those who aren't fascist and ignorant as me, now, New York University.